Hey y'all! I have no hair. I have absolutely no hair left. I got my extensions taken out and I'm so happy with my hair right now. It's like unbelievable. We also did a color remover, so it took some of the black out of my hair, so it's a little bit lighter, but I'm like obsessed with it. I'm absolutely obsessed. It feels weird not having any hair left, but I'm kind of into it. But I am back and we're going to be reading about more haunted asylums and haunted hospitals today. I've been really excited to film another one of these videos because I find these so interesting, and it seemed like you guys really liked the last video, so we're going to keep doing this. But I do want to say really quickly, I am not going to continue my serial killer series. It's hard because I have so many people telling me to continue it, but I personally don't know if I like the series. It just feels so heavy to me, and I don't feel like reading from a book is doing it in a respectful way, like talking about the killers and talking about the victims. Not that the killers need respect, like I don't really care about that, but I just feel like the whole series itself just doesn't sit right with me. I feel like there are a lot of YouTubers who do the true crime stuff really well, but for me personally, I can't sit there and memorize all that stuff. It's just really hard for me to, I can barely remember what I had for fucking breakfast. So trying to memorize the stories and telling them in a way that's not distasteful is really hard for me to do. And I know that sounds like an excuse and it sounds stupid, but I don't think I could pull off true crime personally. So we're not going to continue that, but we are going to read about haunted hospitals because I love that. I love doing that. So we're just going to get started. I'll have the book down below if you guys are interested and you want to read it. But today we're going to learn about Old Changi Hospital. And we're going to move on back so I can lean against my bed. Built while death and destruction were rife, war hospitals always seem to carry the most gruesome histories. Case in point, Old Changi Hospital. Originally called the Royal Air Force Hospital, Old Changi was built by the British in 1935 to care for colonial and local troops in Singapore. That might have been it for the old tale of Changi, but with conflict comes war, and with war comes conquest. In 1942, the Japanese attacked Singapore, taking control of the country and hospital. Suddenly, what was once a place to care for the British soldiers and their allies became a prison camp where many met their deaths. Old Changi became a respiratory to store the British, Australian, Indian, and Malaysian soldiers, as well as the troublesome Singaporeans with anti-Japanese sentiments. The hospital-turned-prison camp was run by the Kampetai, I'm not going to say that correctly, the Japanese secret police, known worldwide for their brutal tactics. Prisoners of war were regularly submitted to torture of the cruelest and most unusual varieties. One Australian soldier recounted his interrogation. The interviewer produced a small piece of wood like a meat skewer, pushed that into my left ear, and tapped it with a small hammer. I think I fainted sometime after it went through the drum. I remember the last excruciating sort of pain, and I must have gone out for some time because I was revived with a bucket of water. Eventually it healed, but of course I couldn't hear with it. I've never been able to hear since. The Japanese used scare tactics on those they allowed to live. They placed iron stakes outside of the YMCA and Cathay buildings of Old Changi. They then displayed the severed hands of executed prisoners on the stakes for all to see. Thousands of people died at the hospital before the Japanese lost and the war ended. As the hospital changed hands back to the British, many of the Japanese soldiers were executed there in turn. Old Changi, which was supposed to be a place of healing, witnessed a lot of death on both sides. In 1975, the British withdrew from Singapore and the hospital truly returned to its original purpose, serving the sick and wounded from Singapore's army as well as the general public. Old Changi was finally abandoned in the 1990s as newer facilities were built. While Old Changi's violent history is well documented, the public has also come forward with stories of abnormal and unexplainable occurrences at the abandoned hospital, by the thousands. It is considered the most haunted place in Singapore, and the locals confirm it by warning visitors to stay away from the area at night. Those brave or foolish enough to visit commonly claim to have seen apparitions or shadows of people, hear disembodied screams, witness strange, erratic lights, and scented phantom scents. Some claim to see a small boy throughout the hospital, always found sitting and staring into nothingness. The boy looks sad, and those who see him feel a strong sense of emotion even after leaving the building. The most horrific stories come from numerous people who reported stumbling across a gory bloodbath, the mass execution of Japanese soldiers. As the stories of strange sights and sounds at Old Changi continue to pour in, the hospital has become a regular attraction for teenagers and thrill seekers. Singaporean native Andreas Chant was once one such teenager. She visited Old Changi with her friends quite a few times when she was young. Most of their visits consisted of the usual thrills, dank, dark rooms, and strange smells that piqued their curiosity more than their fears. But what happened on one visit had them leaving the hospital with chills down their spine. Two of the girls were exploring the second floor when they heard a loud bang on the ceiling of the first floor. They ran over to the source of the sound and stomped their feet on the floor, thinking their friends had been banging on the ceiling to scare them. They heard another loud bang in return. After they ran downstairs to confront their friends, they found the first floor empty. What's more, the ceiling was so high it would have been impossible for anyone to bang on it without a ladder. Jan and her friend later found their other friends on the second floor. They had been exploring another room and had no idea what sounds the other girls were talking about. Events took a turn for the scarier when one of the girls mentioned hearing a voice complaining they were making too much noise, even though there was no one else in the building but the four of them. The voice had offered this warning in Hokkien, the main Chinese dialect spoken in Singapore when the hospital first opened. Chan's account is just one of the thousands of strange and unusual happenings at Old Changi. The notion that the hospital was haunted became so popular that a crew produced a mockumentary film on the premises called Haunted Changi. The film was released in 2010, and while it was meant to be a bit humorous, the real ghosts of Changi weren't laughing. The crew was in for some real paranormal activity that they hadn't bargained for. Many complained of hearing loud bangs from empty parts of the hospital, disembodied voices, and groping of unseen hands. Several reported seeing the apparition of a woman with what appeared to be a black aura. The most ironic and disturbing part about it is that they also managed to catch a shadow person on video while filming the movie. They decided to leave the video of the lurking figure in the final cut of the film, lending some unintended credibility to the message of Haunted Changi. After garnering so much spooky and unexpected interest, many attempts have been made to plan a reconstruction of the dead and decaying hospital. All have fallen through for one reason or another, and the historic building lies vacant to this day. To some, it's a paranormal haven, sure to leave visitors with chills down their spines and sights they can't unsee. For others, the building is a monument of war and preservance. No matter which camp you're in, Old Changi, and maybe its ghosts, is a testament to a particularly gruesome and unforgiving time in human history. Nar is driving me up a wall right now. He wanted to get out of the window, like he wanted to look out the window, so I had to open the window for him, and then he starts banging the blinds anyways, even though I opened the window. And then he's just crawling back here. This is why I lock my cats out while I'm filming. I can't do it. Okay, and this next one we're going to learn about is the Beechworth Lunatic Asylum. By the late 1860s in Australia, Victoria's only mental institution was bursting at the seams with mentally ill patients. In response, the Mayday Hills Lunatic Asylum was open to house and treat up to 1,200 patients. Getting admitted was a simple affair, requiring only 2 signatures from friends or relatives who wanted to lock you up. Getting out was more difficult. Later renamed the Beechworth Lunatic Asylum, Mayday Hills was open for 128 years and brings with it a history of strange medical practices and care. The first superintendent himself may have been a bit off. He believed that the moon caused insanity and refused to go outside at nighttime without an umbrella. Housing a mixture of 600 men and 600 women, the Beechworth Lunatic Asylum was almost always full, though whether the patients deserved to be there is a different story. Many of the patients were not actually clinically insane. In order to leave the hospital, a patient would need 8 signatures certifying they were fit for the outside world. Most of the doctors, nurses, and caretakers at Beechworth viewed their patients as liabilities beyond cure and lacked the care and compassion of today's caregivers. As a result, many completely sane people spent their lives locked in Beechworth's expansive wards. While freedom might have been a futile endeavor, access to the latest treatments for insanity were in abundance. Beechworth was equipped with the latest tools for handling and treating the insane. Doctors had access to a fully equipped lab for operations, autopsies, and any other experiments they would like to try. The shelves of the lab were said to be filled with jars of body parts from unlucky patients, though after a fire had damaged the ward, the jars were removed. Before the 1950s, psychiatric medication was unavailable, so shackles and straitjackets were often used to help control patients' aggressive and unruly behavior. The Grevillea wing of the hospital was home to the electroshock treatment facility, an incredibly routine treatment for the clinically insane. No one would dream of treating a patient with electroshock therapy today. The shocks were strong, and often forced the patient's bodies to contract into unnatural positions, snapping bones, ligaments, and teeth in the process. For good reason, the Grevillea wing was the part of the hospital that all patients feared most. The stories still circulated about mass treatments where almost everyone in the hospital was shocked in group sessions. If they weren't insane before, they certainly were afterwards. No one seems to know exactly how many patients died at the Beechworth Lunatic Asylum, although it's estimated to be between 3,000 and 9,000. Most left this world as victims of their illness, wasting away, taking their own lives, or suffering the effects of aggressive treatments. The less troubled and more ductile patients died of old age, though a few deaths were a lot more suspicious. The example of this was the death of a nameless Jewish woman, committed to the women's wing of Beechworth. She kept to herself mostly and didn't cause any trouble as long as she had her cigarettes. People would often find her sitting in a high-story window, smoking. One day, another patient wanted to have her cigarettes. Maybe they asked politely at first, no one could say, but the woman was never one for sharing and wouldn't give any up. One thing led to another, and suddenly the Jewish woman found herself tumbling out the window to her death. No one knows what ultimately became of the other patient, but everyone remembers what happened to the Jewish woman. They left her body lying in the grass for 2 days before moving her. You see, in Jewish tradition, no one is allowed to touch the deceased until a rabbi has seen the body. Since the closest rabbi had to come all the way from Melbourne, the woman's gruesome end was a sight for all to see for more than 48 hours. It's possible the woman didn't appreciate such a steadfast observance of her religious beliefs. In more recent years, many have reported seeing the eerie outline of a woman lurking where her body fell so many years before. Others claim to have seen a woman's face in the window where she loved to sit and smoke. Escaping from Beechworth was nearly impossible, though that didn't stop people from trying. The most unruly patients were locked in cells, while the others were kept on the grounds by twistedly named ha-ha walls, high trenched walls that no patient could ever hope to climb. Despite these securities, one man disappeared from the compound long ago. The asylum staff and surrounding community searched desperately to find him. No one wanted a committed lunatic roaming the streets. Eventually, they had to give him up as lost. Then, several weeks after they abandoned the search, someone found the asylum's pet dog, Max, happily gnawing on a meaty bone. On closer inspection, Max's snack was the remains of a human leg. The asylum staff conducted another search by the gatehouse where the leg was found. A suspicious-looking shadow and horrific smell helped the searchers uncover the patient's body in a tree. His body had managed to decompose so much that his leg had fallen to the ground for Max to find. No one ever discovered how the patient actually died in the tree, but many since claimed to have seen the man's ghost lurking near the asylum's entrance. He never did get out. An active asylum for 128 years, Beechworth was witness to a lot of pain and suffering by patients before it was decommissioned in 1995. Now it has been partially converted into a satellite campus for La Trobe University, a hotel, and a tour facility. However, many parts, including the Grevillea wing, have been left unused and dilapidated. Since most of the asylum has been transformed and is now full of guests, paranormal sightings are everywhere. Matron Sharp was once a caretaker at the asylum and has been spotted by so many witnesses that she can't be ignored. In life, she was known for her compassionate care of patients, which was uncharacteristic in her time. In death, she seems to be carrying on her routine. Matron Sharp is most often seen with patients in the Grevillea wing, comforting them before electroshock therapy. Those who spot her often feel calm and comforted despite the overwhelming chill that fills the room. That said, it's probably easier for Matron Sharp to comfort a person who's seen a ghost than a patient who's about to get the shock of his life. The asylum's recreation hall was one of the few places where patients could relax, perform plays and concerts, and attend Sunday Mass. In 1939, it was converted into a cinema for inmates. As one of the few places that regularly brought joy to the lives of prisoners, it made sense that they would visit the recreation hall in death. What doesn't make any sense is that the most commonly cited specter in the wing is a desperate-looking young girl who approaches people and tries to talk to them. Others have seen the ghost of an elderly man gazing longingly out of the window in the bell tower. Clearly, Beechworth's history holds a lot more that meets the eye, as some of the former inmates are trying to communicate. Even more disturbing is that despite the fact the asylum was only for adults, numerous workers have heard the distinct sounds of children laughing throughout the hospital, but were never able to track down where the voices were coming from. Others claim to have felt someone pulling on their clothes and poking them in the ribs in the Bijou Theater. What secrets does this asylum hold that children would choose to linger in such a place? Or maybe they can't leave. Tours of the hospital never fail to spook someone. Guests often describe seeing a serious-looking man following them through the halls. Behind the man, two other strange figures follow, joking and laughing. Some say the serious man is a former doctor. That would make sense with his stern attitude. He could be one of the therapists pondering his next experimental treatment on his way to the laboratory. But the identities of the laughing men following him remain a mystery. Guests of the hotel also frequently report hearing footsteps in the hallway that belong to no one, and tapping on the old glass windows. Beechworth is a haunting ground for doctors, patients, and workers alike. Not spooked enough? The Beechworth Ghost Tour is the most popular in mainland Australia. Go and see for yourself. That is all I'm going to read for now. I'm going to stick with reading about 2 haunted asylums / haunted hospitals in each video. I don't want to overload you with information because it does give you a lot of information on these places, and I don't want to get them mixed up in my mind because I feel like I'll easily do that. So these videos will be a little bit shorter than my normal videos, but that's okay. I can have some shorter videos. I'm allowed to do that. But I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm going to go. I love y'all. I will see you in the next one. Bye. Does anyone else have the issue of everything always being way too small on them or way too short on them? I'm just a lanky bitch. So my jackets are always way too short and it's very frustrating. It's very annoying. But this jacket does come with thumb holes, so if I really wanted to, I could stretch this bitch all the way and put my thumbs in the holes, but then it just feels awkward because it's too small. I don't know, but it's very annoying. I'm too lanky for my own good. But okay, see ya.